We'll go over the last Gemara now on Daf Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, and we said that this member of Beis Avtinus, this descendant, finally was agreeable to share that document with all the secrets of the Ketores with Rabbi Yochanan ben Nuri, and as a result, when Rabbi Akiva was told of this, he declared, "Me'ata asur lesaper b'gnutzam shel elu." No longer speak negatively of the Beis Avtinus. And Ben Azai on the bottom of Lamed Ches Amud Aleph, "B'shimcha yikra'ucha uvimkomcha yoshivucha umishalcha yitnu lecha." On the top of Daf Lamed Ches Amud Beis, no one will take away from your portion. Ein adam nogea b'muchan lechavera. What does this mean? Hashem has something muchan, has something set aside, singled out for each person. V'ein malchus nogas b'chaverta. And let's say, for example, one person is serving as a king, and his time as king will continue until another king will take over for him, but the other king will not, the second king will not take over before it's time for the first king to give up his reign. Afilu kumlo nema, even a hair's breadth. Now, the Mishnah had mentioned another person, Lignai, who was categorized very harshly, and that was Hugras ben Levi. He was a Levi who knew some secret about a musical method, and he refused to share it with others, with other Leviim. Tanya, we learned in the Brisa. Shunosen kolo b'ne'ima, when he wanted to sing beautifully, Machnis Godol L'toch Piv, he knew a certain method, a secret method of putting his thumb inside his mouth, Meniech Etzbo Bein Hanimin, and he would place his finger somehow between, underneath the nose, which like in the area between the hairs of the mustache on two sides. And with this method, he was able to sing so beautifully, with such sweetness, Ad Shahayu Echav HaKohanim, until his colleagues in the Beis Hamikdash, Nizkarim Bebas Rosh Lachareim, they would somehow like jump backwards as a response to this beautiful, beautiful sound. And Tosfos says that Hugras made a statement that he didn't want to teach this method of singing. He wanted to keep it for himself. He didn't want it to get into the wrong hands. Tana Rabbanu, we learned in the Brisa, Ben Kamtzor, who was again mentioned le gnai and censured. Why? Lo rotza lamed al ma'isaksav. He had a special method of writing the Shem Hashem, and he didn't want to share it with anyone. Amru Olav, and they said about him, Shayanotel arba kul motzim bein etzvosov. He could hold on to 4 different quills between his 4 fingers and write simultaneously 4 different letters. Ve'im haisa teva shel arba osios, and therefore, if he was writing the Shem Hashem Yud Kei Vav Kei of 4 letters, hayakotzva b'vas achas, he would write the Shem Hashem in one moment, in one synchronized second, and this would avoid any issue about a hefsek between one letter and the other. Amulo Mara Isa Shalolamin. Why don't you teach it to others? Now, Kulan, all the above that we mentioned, Lignai, Matsu, Chubal, and Devrayim, they always had the answer that maybe this secret method will get into the wrong hands and it'll reach the idol worshippers. Ben Kamtzor, Lo Matza Chubal, and Dvar. He couldn't find any justification. In other words, he admitted that he was only interested in his self-glory. The Brisa says, Ad Harishon Al Harishonim Nemar Zecher Tzadik Levracha. Al Ben Kamtzor v'Chaverav Nemar B'Shem Rishayim Yirkov. The wicked shall rot. My V'Shem Rishayim Yirkov Amrav Lazar Rakvivus Tale B'Shmosam. Rust should grow on their names. We should not use their names. No one should call their children by the name of these Rishonim. And the Gemara asks the following question: Masiv Ravina, we find the name Doeg, and that's a very bad name. Maisa Doeg ben Yosef. We have a story about Doeg, the son of Yosef. Shiniach Aviv ben Katan li'imo. Hinicho Aviv, his father left him as a small child with his mother. Maybe his father died. Ubechol yom haisa imo modidato bitfachim. She would measure him in tfachim, meaning she was so excited about his growth. V'nosenes mishkol shel zav lebeis hamikdash. Whatever increment in his growth, she would donate that volume to the Beis Hamikdash in gold. Kishegavar oyev, but when Nebuchadnezzar prevailed over the Jewish people, this is the type of Haggadah you read on Tisha B'Av. Tvachaso v'achalto. She actually, probably she saw her son dying of starvation, and she slaughtered him and consumed him. She ate his flesh. V'olav Oleh Konen Yirmiyah, regarding this episode of the Doeg ben Yosef, who left this child, the lamentations in Eicha of Yirmiyah im Tochalna Noshim Piryon Olole Tipuchim. Should women eat their offspring, the babes of their care? Now, the word tipuchim means care, litapeach, but it also means tfachim, because she had measured him in tfachim. Meshiva ruach hakodesh meres, and when the Navi sort of cries out, how could we understand this? I mean, after all, she donated his increase in weight and size to the Beis Hamikdash, and now this is what happens: is Meshiva Ruach Hakodesh Omeres Yeharig b'Mikdash Hashem Kohen v'Navi, and here it's a reference to Zechariah ben Yoyada, who was both a Kohen Gadol and a Navi, who was killed in the Beis Hamikdash by one of the Jews. Chazi my solikwe. So the Gemara says that how could the child be named Doeg? I mean, Doeg is the name of an evildoer. There was Doeg HaDomi, who was the rival and the enemy of Melech David in the Gemara in Sanhedrin Kuf Vav. But the Gemara says Chazu Mai Salakbe. So Enochinami, they gave him that name, but look what happened to him at the very end. In other words, no one who's called by the name of a Rasha, like in this case Doeg, will achieve success. Rabbi Loza, Tzaddik Me'atzmo, a righteous person, we remember him on his own account. The Rasha Mechavero, but when we think of a Rasha, we think of all his colleagues that are also Rishonim, and he hangs out with this bad chevra. Tzaddik me'atzmo. How do I know that this is zecher tzaddik livracha? And the word tzaddik is in the singular, but shem rishon ksiv, shem rishon yirkov, rishon is in the plural, and therefore we remember him together with his whole kabura, his whole mafia. Amalei Ravina lahu Rabbana. Davi Misadar Agadato Kameh. Ravina said to one of the rabbis who was in charge of the Agadah, of teaching the Agadah, the philosophical parts of Torah. A very strange question. Now, what's the source for Zecher Tzadik Livracha? Amalei, it's a pasuk in Tanakh. The Aksiv, it says in the book of Mishlei, Zecher Tzadik Livracha. But Midoraisa Mino, and I want to know, is there any source in the Torah itself for this concept of Zecher Tzadik Livracha? And this rabbi gives him the response, will I hide from Avram? This is in the context of stone, that which I'm doing. And immediately the next pasuk it says, Avram, Hayo Yeh L'Goy Gadol v'atzum. God says, I promise that Avram will be a great and powerful nation. Mina milsa the Omer Rabbanan Shem Rishon Yirkov. Hamalei the Aksiv Shem Rishon Yirkov. Midaraisa Minon. Where's the source in the Torah that the name of the wicked will be rotted out, blotted out? Tichsiv Vayel ad stone. Lot pitched his tent at stone, and immediately the next pasuk says, "Uksiv the anshe stone roim v'chatoim l'Hashem bi'od." They were wicked and sinful, and they will be destroyed. Omar Rabbi Loza. Tzaddik dar bein shnei rishonim. You can have a case of a tzaddik, as we'll soon see, Ovadia, a Novi, who lives between two evildoers. And yet, Lomad Mimaseyam, he's such a great tzaddik that he was not influenced by their evil ways. But Rasha, dar bein shnei tzaddikim, you can have a wicked person who is surrounded by tzaddikim, and yet Lomad Mimaseyam, he did not learn from their ways. Tzaddik dar bein shnei rishon Lomad Mimaseyam Ovadia. And Ovadia was surrounded by Achav and Izevel, two Rishonim. And yet he remained an absolute tzaddik. In fact, he is a paradigm of a tzaddik. But Rasha dar ben shnei tzaddik v'lo maseyem ze Esav. This is a reference to Esav, who is raised with Yitzchak and Rivka, and yet he remains a Rasha, even though he's surrounded by great tzaddikim. There's a very interesting note here that I wanted to share with you in the name of the Rambam, because there's so much discussion here about mentioning a tzaddik livracha, and whenever we mention a tzaddik, we say zecher tzaddik livracha, or for example, if he's alive, we say sheyichye l'yomim tovim v'aruchim, we bless him. The Rambam actually categorizes speech into 5 categories. Number 1, chova. Number 2, isur on the other extreme. Number 3, that kind of speech that should be avoided. Number 4, that which is permitted, like business transactions and so forth. And 5, desirable speech. And in this last category, we include zecher tzaddik livracha. And by praising the characteristics of a tzaddik, it makes an impact on others. They will want to imitate that example. And what this means is that whenever you find that Hashem blesses a tzaddik, immediately you'll find that he curses a Rosh and vice versa. By Avram Avinu, it says, and God speaks about the bracha that the tzaddik Avram deserves. Immediately afterwards, it says, and God says, I will curse and destroy stone. And the reverse, and immediately afterwards, it says, Vashem Amar El Avram, Achrei Parade Lot Mi Mo. And Hashem returned his speech, his close relation to Avram, after Lot left his presence, separated himself from Avram. And in this long chain of different Agadic statements attributed to Rabbi Elazar, we have the following. Rabbi Elazar kol mishakeach davar mitalmudo. If somehow he deliberately forgets something from his studies, gorem golus lebanav, the punishment will be exile. Just like he's cut off from his Torah, so too his children will be cut off from their homeland, and they will be sent into Golish and Emar, as the pasuk tells us in Hosea Navi, Vatishkach Toras Elokecha Eshkach Bonecha Gam Oni. Because you have forgotten the law of your God, I also will forget your children. I will send them into Golus. Rabbi Yavo Omar, he has another negative implication or repercussion of forgetting one's Torah. Moridin also Migdula, so he loses his position of greatness. shenemar, as the pasuk says, and this is a pasuk in the Mishlei, ki ata hadas ma'asta, which literally means you have hated knowledge. V'am ascha michahayin li, and I reject you from serving me as a minister to me. And basically, one's greatness stems from Torah, and if he forsakes the Torah, then his greatness will forsake him. And now we move on to a set of statements of Agada of Rab Chia bar Abba, the name Rab Yochanan, also with regard to the tzaddikim. Ein tzaddik niftar min ha'olam ad shenivra tzaddik kimoso. If one righteous person dies, you should know there's another righteous person that was just born into the world, shenemar, as the pasuk says in Koheles, Bizarach Hashemesh Uba Hashemesh. That means that before Uba Hashemesh, at the end of this pasuk, the sunset, there will be Bizarach Hashemesh. And Bizarach Hashemesh, sunrise, is a metaphor for a Jewish great tzaddik who will be born. And now he proves this. Achalokovsa Shimshol Shel Eli, before Eli died, literally the son of Eli was extinguished. Zarcha Shimsho Shel Shmuel Aramasi, literally the son of Shmuel Aramasi rose and shined. Shone. Again, Amar Chia bar Abba, Amar Yochanan, Ra Kadosh Baruch Hu Shetzadikim Uatim. God saw that there were very few tzaddikim. These are really the tzaddikim amitiyim, the true tzaddikim. Amarush Solon v'chol dar v'dar. He spread them and planted them throughout each generation. Shenemar, as the pasuk teaches us in Shmuel Aleph, Ki Lashem mitzuke eretz vayoshes aleim tevel. For to God are the pillars of the earth, and He set the world upon them. So it means he planted tzaddikim in every single dar, and they would be the pillars, the foundations of the world, so that the world could endure. Again, Amar Rab Chia bar Abba, Rab Yochanan, Afilu b'shvil tzaddik echad olam miskayim. The world should exist even in the merit of one single tzaddik. Shenemar v'tzaddik yisod olam. And the word v'tzaddik is in singular. Yisod olam, he's the foundation of the world. He justifies the entire existence. That's what we derive from this pasuk in Mishlei. Rab Chia didei Omar me'achach. Rab Chia, however, although he quoted this in the name of Rab Yochanan, he had his own source to derive the same exact conclusion from a pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. And there the pasuk says, Raglei Chasidav Yishma. The Yishmar means he'll preserve, meaning the world, because of the Raglei Chasidov, the, so to speak, the legs, the feet of his devout ones. Chasidov Tuva, Mashal Gemara says, wait a minute, it doesn't indicate that there's one tzaddik. It sounds like there are many because it says Chasidov in the plural. Omar Rab Nachman Yitzchak Chasido Ksiv. Proper way of writing the word is chasido in the singular. Another statement of Amar Rab Chia bar Abba Rab Yochanan, Kevan sheyatzu rov shnosav shalom v'lochot. If a person has gotten to an older age and he had many occasions to fall trapped to the sin and he did not do so, shuvei nechote, he's guaranteed that he will not sin for the balance of his year in that particular temptation. Shenema ragle chasidav yishmar. Hashem will guard the concluding years of his devout ones. The Bei Rabbi Shilo Amri, and we have another interpretation of the very same pasuk. What do we derive from Raglei Chasid of Yishmar? Kevan sheba liyodo dvar avera pam rishono shnia v'eno chote. He was tempted in this particular avera once and twice, and he did not sin. Shuv eno chote. He's guaranteed that he will no longer sin in that matter. Shenemar Raglei Chasidov Yishmar. And although, as a general rule, we have a chazak after 3 times, but here we have a chazak after 2 times, which is guaranteed as a chiddush by this pasuk. Omer Shlokish, my dichsiv. With regard to tzaddikim, what does it mean in the pasuk in Tehillim? No, I'm sorry, pasuk in Mishlei. Im la'leitzim hu yolitz v'lanovim yitein chen. To cynics, he will act cynically, but to the humble, he will grant favor or grace. That's called chen. And chen is always connected with rachamim, that God, when he finds favor, somebody finds favor in his eyes, he bestows upon him great mercy and rachamim and compassion. If he wants to be mitami himself, then you know what? There'll be an opening for him. He'll be able to do so. Messiah also. And if he wants to purify himself, then we give him assistance from on top, from on above, to be mitayr himself. Tana de Bei Rabbi Yishmael, we learned in the Brisa in the name of Rabbi Yishmael, Moshali Adam Shayamocher Neft Vafarsamon. In his store, he sold neft and balsam. Neft is foul smelling, and balsam has the most pleasant fragrance. And here we turn to Daf Lamed Tes. Bol limdod neft, if he's coming to measure out neft, Omer lo midod atoli atzmach, measure it for yourself. In other words, somebody comes in to measure out neft, the storekeeper says, do it somewhere far away from me. I don't want to have to smell it. But bol limdod afarsamon, if a customer comes in, he wants to buy a farsamon, he wants to measure it out, he said, Omer lo hamteimli achem dol imcha, let me be there with you when you measure it out. I want to enjoy the smell, the fragrance, kadesh, and espase manivato. Tona debei Rabbi Shmuel. Avera mitam temes libo shel odom. A sin causes timtum alev. It hardens the heart. Shenemar, as the pasuk tells us in the parsha of Arayos. In the parsha of Machalos Asuris of Shrotzim V'Ramosim, Velote Tamu Behem, Vinit Mesem Bam. Al Tikre Vinit Mesem Ela Vinitamtem, that it becomes an obstruction around the heart. And it should have been written Vinit Mesem without an aleph, and it says Vinit Mesem with an aleph, and therefore we read it as if it says Vinitamtem, and the heart here is in the sense of the wisdom of a person. And the sin obstructs that wisdom, and his mind is dulled. He's not able to make the right decisions, and all this is because he was guilty of consuming forbidden foods. Tan Rabbanon, v'lo titamu bahem v'nit matem v'nit meitem bam. Adam mitame atzmo ma'at. If a person is mitame himself a little bit, mitame also harbe, he will suffer additional tumah. No, since he allowed himself to become defiled, then he should be aware of the fact that there'll be more contamination. Mitame also harbe, bilamat, and if he contaminates himself below, mitame also milamala, he'll become tomei as far as the higher realms are concerned. And B'yom Hazef, he's mitame himself in this world, mitame also li'olam haba. Rabbanon iskadashtem v'yisem kedoshim. The Torah in Parshas Kedoshim enjoins us to be sanctified. Adam mekadesh atzmo ma'at, if he sanctifies himself a little bit, mekadesh also harbe, we will add and intensify his kedusha from above. Milamata, that which he does down here on this world, mekadesh also lamala. Polamazeh mekadesh also li'olam haba. We will sanctify him for the next. I inadvertently skipped one line in the Gemara here on Lamed Ches Amud Beis. Let's go back. Omar Abelazar afilu b'shvil tzadik echad ha'olam nivra. One tzaddik, if he was created, will justify the creation of the world. Shenemar vayar Elokim es ha'or ki tov. V'yein tov ela tzaddik. The word tov here means a tzaddik. Shenemar as the pasuk says in Yeshayahu Hanavi, Imru Tzadik Ki Tov. When it says Vayar Elokim, it means that God saw with his das, and it found favor in his eyes that the Oro Shel Olam, the light of the universe, should be created for one Tzadik Shu Tov. And even one single tzaddik is called Tov. And then we had the Gemara of Kol Mishakeach Dovar Echad Mitalmudo Gorem Golus Lebanov. And there's a Gemara Menachos that parallels this Gemara. Hamashakech Dovar Echad Mitalmudo Over Balav Shenemar Hishamalcha Ushmar Nafshcha Miod Pentishkach Esadvarim. And it means he shouldn't be mafne libo levatola. Loses is the Torah leiv tamin. Shaloish kachem. He should always be connected to Torah, not to discontinue his awareness of Torah. However, him shachach machmas ones, if there were mitigating circumstances, lo ovar be'isur zeh. He doesn't violate this isur. And the Ritva adds that Rabbi Loza is talking about a gorem b'mezid l'kach sheyishkach talmudo. He does it b'mezid in a way that he will forget his Talmud. As far as our generations are concerned, we have the Gra, who apparently said that the din of Hamishkachet Over Echad Mimishnaso only applies to the Rishonim. They used to learn Baal Peh. However, the Rav Shulchan Aruch says, he paskins that even now that we have Torah Baal Peh in writing, Adarabah, he has the ability to have access to review what he learned, and if he fails to do so, then this is an Avera. He's going to forget what he learned, and he violates this law. And we said, Moridin also Migdulaso. Das here is Torah, and man is being notified the Darkei HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and Keneged Shema Astosa, Gam Hashem Yimas Becha Milios Kohen Eli Ovdo Lefanav Lavod Lefanav She'ein Dover Kazer Roy Lecha. Now Rabbi Avo is not coming to argue against Rabbi Eliezer, just wants to add to him that in addition to the onage of Golus, is also an onage of Horada Migdulasa. Davar, now Rabbi Avo talks about Shokech Davar Echad Mi Talmudo. And the pasuk says, Vatishkach Toras Elokecha Hadas Ma'asta. And the kavanah is that he forgot l'chora all of his Talmud. And also Vayamascha Mikaid Li is, how do we know that that's referring to a Shokech Davar Mi Talmudo? L'chora, we're talking about a Moes B'Torah. So the Toldos Yitzchak answers that in the pasuk there's a stira l'chora. At the beginning it says Nidmu Ami Mipli Adas Ki Ato Adas Ma'asta, and it sounds like he was not osik b'Torah at all. He was moes b'Torah. But the end of the pasuk says Vatishkach Torah lelokecha. Sounds like he wasn't moes in the Torah. He was osik b'Torah, but he forgot it. So Rabbi Loza says that me'isas haTorah in this pasuk is she'asku ba v'lo hoisa chaviva leim kol kach. It wasn't so beloved to them, and therefore lo nisasku ba kol tzarka lo chazra limudam lishanos kol inyan kama pa'omim kidei shetiyeh sdura b'fiyah val yidei zeh bo lidei shichach v'zeh hamashakeh dover mi talmud. What kind of shikha? It's a shikha that comes as a result in the footsteps of Me'isa. That's Mishkakeach Dover Echad, Oshnayim Mi Talmuda. And then we have the statement in the name of Rabbi Yochanan that another tzaddik will be born, and the statement that there are very few tzaddikim, God plants them throughout the generations, and the world will continue to exist even in the schus of one single tzaddik. Okay, then, so this is where we're going to stop. We'll end with the words Hadron Alecha Amar Lahem Hamimuna, and the next Mishnah and the next Perek, which is the fourth Perek, is Toraf B'Kalf. Wishing you a great day.